I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about Trump in the UK. What a trip so far. What's just let's talk kind of relaxed, Alexander, about what's going on. You're in London right now. What are your impressions?
Well, I have been following state visits to England, to Britain, since the 1970s. And it's something the British historically have always done very well. They're very, very good at rolling out the red carpets, having all, the trumpeters, the Queen, the banquets in Buckingham Palace, all those sort of things. I have never, ever seen a state visit quite like this one. I mean, first of all, Donald Trump is the most extraordinary president. I mean, he breaks all the rules of diplomatic protocol. He says what he thinks. He is literally, a force. Some would say a bull in a china shop. I've seen that description. But I mean, he just sort of steamrollers every protocol and convention in his way, and does so, I find, in a most hilarious fashion. I know not everybody finds it funny, but I do. And of course, he's come to Britain at a time when the British political system and the British political class are in chaos. They've mismanaged Brexit. Both of the two major political parties are in chaos. One of them, Theresa May, the leader of one of them, Theresa May, who's the Prime Minister, is due to leave very soon. And the other one, the Labour Party, its leader, Jeremy Corbyn, is in crisis. So we have a country in crisis being receiving a president who just, as I said, throws bombs around, metaphorical bombs, I should say, bombs of, criticism, in all directions and quite indiscriminately. And so we've had situations where Trump won't speak to Jeremy Corbyn, who is the leader of the opposition. He offers to meet Boris Johnson, who for unknown reasons won't see him. And he's seeing Nigel Farage instead, who isn't apparently, who isn't in fact, properly speaking, a member of the British political class at all, because he's not even an MP. So we have this utterly chaotic and hilarious state visit. But we shouldn't just see the comic side of it, because, of course, Donald Trump, amidst all the fun, always comes along with certain very powerful messages. And the British are finding some of those messages extremely uncomfortable. But he's come with ideas about trade. He's come with ideas about Brexit. And he's come, of course, also to discuss China and Britain's relationship with China, which he clearly thinks has become altogether too close.
Yeah, we have, let's just stay on the fun part for just a little bit longer. We have Johnson snubbed Trump. Trump snubbed Corbyn. Trump is fighting with Khan. Khan is fighting with Trump. Trump touched the Queen and everyone flipped out.
Absolutely.
I mean, what is it? Just break down this, and then we'll get on to the serious stuff.
You're not supposed to do that. I mean, the Queen in Britain is not just. She's not just a person. She's not equivalent to the president. I mean, she's a regal royal figure, and a lot of British people take it very seriously. So his familiarity when he deals with the Queen is unusual, to say the least.
But Michelle Obama, I think, also was accused, if I'm not mistaken, of doing the same thing, correct?
Absolutely. Americans are never are always too familiar when they deal with the Queen.
So the Queen is probably she's used to handling stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. She takes it. She's incredibly experienced. I mean, she's been Queen since 1952. I mean, she's hugely experienced in handling all sorts of people. She's met some really unpleasant people in her time also on state visits. So this is nothing difficult for her, and she'll handle the whole situation as she always does, with great skill and aplomb, and she won't personally be embarrassed at all. But it's the politics off stage which are so funny. I mean, as I said, as you correctly say, Corbyn getting snubbed by Trump, going to address an anti-Trump rally, and in which all sorts of incredibly rude things are going to be said about Trump, organized by his Labour Party.
Did Corbyn want to meet with Trump? Was that the scenario? Or
apparently he did, which seems very odd.
And why would Trump want to meet with?
Exactly. Why would Trump want to meet with Corbyn when Corbyn is saying some horrible things about him? And at the same time, as I said, Trump saying horrible things about Sadiq Khan, who, as I said in a previous program, in my opinion, brought them on himself. And of course, the surprise, Boris Johnson declining to meet Trump, even whilst Trump is going out of his way to tell everybody, as we've discussed in an earlier program, that he wants Boris Johnson to become the next British Prime Minister. I suspect that Boris Johnson is calculating that from his point of view, the endorsement helps him with some Conservative MPs, and snubbing the meeting with Donald Trump helps him with others. So I think Boris Johnson thinks of it as, he's winning both ways that way. It might be more of a problem if he actually becomes Prime Minister, because I think Trump remembers these sorts of things. And of course, there's Nigel Farage off stage, who is perfectly happy to meet with Trump and to be seen with him, and apparently who's been invited to meet Trump at the American embassy. And last but not least, there's Theresa May, who's floating above all of this. As I said, our Prime Minister in name only, because she's due to leave in a few weeks, and has no real power anymore, and is just basically an ornament. She's not really any person of any great significance, but nonetheless is obliged to listen to lectures from Donald Trump about Britain's relationship with China, which he's not happy with.
Yeah, I think an ornament is much too kind and too flattering. She's more of a corpse, a zombie, or a corpse floating around.
As many have pointed out, Alex, I'm a very kind and polite.
Yeah, I can see. I definitely understand what you're getting at. But out of all of these meetings, I mean, I would say out of all of this intrigue, and we'll wrap it up on this point with the fun stuff here. Out of all of these meetings, I would say from a protocol standpoint, Trump, has no reason to meet with Corbyn as president of the United States. I can understand the Johnson meeting in that he looks like he's going to be the next prime minister, so they may want to, kind of, sit down and talk about some stuff. Sadiq Khan, I don't even know why the mayor of London is even, outside of getting, identity politics, gold stars. And SJW gold stars, I don't know why he's making such a fuss about it, about Trump being in London. I don't think that's proper as the mayor. He shouldn't be doing that at all. That's ridiculous, childish.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I agree with you, by the way, about Corbyn. I think, again, Donald Trump is sending a message to Corbyn, because what he's saying to Corbyn is, look, if you have any real serious aspirations to become Prime Minister of Britain, you've got to remember that I'm the President of the United States. You deal with me. And it's not up to you at the end of the day to decide whether you can be rude to me in London, because if you do that, you will find that you are blocked off from access to the United States, which is the country, which is the great superpower to which Britain is allied and to which Britain is extremely dependent. And if Brexit does happen, Britain is going to become more dependent on the United States. And that's an important consideration which we're going to touch upon. Now, I can remember back in the 1980s, there was a situation where the then Labour leader, who was Neil Kinnock, came to Washington to meet the US president, who was Ronald Reagan. And I think they did actually meet, but I think the meeting went off extremely badly because Reagan didn't like Kinnock and didn't like many of his policies. And in the end, Kinnock suffered for it because even though Ronald Reagan was not very popular in Britain at that time, as I remember, many of the same things in those days used to be said about Reagan as are said today about Trump. In the end, people did understand that Reagan was the president of the United States, just as Donald Trump is the president of the United States today. And if, as prime minister, you can't relate to that person, you can't relate to the US president, then you can't be an effective prime minister. And Kinnock lost support as a result. And I think Corbyn needs to be very, very careful how far he pushes this.
I completely agree with you on that point, Alexander. And my thinking on this is that if Corbyn is serious about being prime minister, if he was really serious about it, he wouldn't be speaking at a rally, at an anti-Trump rally, and he wouldn't be bashing the U.S. president, even if he doesn't like him. And I'd say this, you don't bash. If you're serious about being prime minister and you're in the opposition, you're the shadow government or you're the main opposition, you don't go to rallies and bash foreign leaders of other countries. You don't bash Chinese leaders. You don't bash Russian leaders. You don't bash American, Indian. It doesn't matter. You just don't do it if you're serious about one day leading the country. You take a much more diplomatic approach. And so it shows Corbyn is not, he's not a real serious player here.
I entirely agree with that, by the way. I'm entirely of that view. I would add that I think Corbyn, who is under a great deal of political pressure at the moment because of his muddled stance on Brexit, which we've talked about on our programmes, is doing this, it seems to me, to shore up his base. But I think this is a badly played game, and I think it's a mistake. I think, as I said, what it does is it begs questions about whether he's a fit person to be prime minister.
Exactly.
And already you can see that there are articles appearing in parts of the British media which are making that very point, even amongst people who do not like Donald Trump.
Yeah, either you act like an opposition leader and you go to rallies and you speak out against whoever you want and you make a lot of noise, or you act diplomatic and you rise above and you act like a leader. So Corbyn, I think, is choosing which way he wants to go. But Alexander, you mentioned three things: trade, Brexit, China.
Yes.
Let's talk a little policy now.
Yes. Well. First of all, let's actually deal with the middle one first, because Brexit. I mean, Donald Trump has always made clear that he supports Brexit, and I think he's basically given the clearest indication of the kind of people that he wants to support on Brexit, who are people like Nigel Farage, and ultimately, I suppose one still has to say Boris Johnson. And this is going to be important because what Donald Trump is saying to the British is you do have an alternative. I mean, when you talk about Europe all the time and about Europe being your major economic and trade partner, well, so it is, but we are the United States. We have an economy that is, actually even bigger than Europe's. We share the same language as you. We share a very similar legal system. We are in some ways a more logical economic trade partner of Britain than Europe is. So, you mustn't think of yourselves as being completely committed to Europe or having no other options. And if you are prepared to go for Brexit, you will be doing what we in the United States are doing, which is put our interests first. The United States, under Donald Trump, has made it very clear to the world, to the Europeans first and foremost, that we are, as the United States, going to assert our own sovereignty, our own national interests. We're not going to be subordinating ourselves to some overarching Western Atlanticist neoliberal consensus if that doesn't suit us. And I think that's what Donald Trump is saying. It's a message he's saying. And I think, again, it does carry some traction here. Not with everyone, but certainly with some of the people who might be voting in the elections to choose the next Conservative leader. So I think Brexit is an issue, and I think he did want to highlight that. Now, that does segue very quickly into the issue of trade. We know that Donald Trump and his administration have been offering the British a trade deal. It is a trade deal which has been analysed by all sorts of people and which is very, very heavily skewed in the US's favour. So if the British want to trade with the US, they will have to be extremely tough negotiators. But I think with Donald Trump, I think you can be. But I mean, he wants all sorts of things. He wants to lift British tariff barriers to American industrial exports. He wants to lift British tariff barriers to US agricultural imports. That's a big, tough topic for the British because the British have very, very high food hygiene and food safety and animal welfare laws, which they might find it's difficult for them to continue with if the US insists on it. And of course, for many people in Britain, the absolute red line is that he wants complete freedom for US companies to be able to provide products to the National Health Service, the British National Health Service. And I think the British will be very resistant to that too. So there will be a tough negotiation. But, you know, with Donald Trump, it's always a tough negotiation.
Right. And China?
Right. Well, I think this. Okay. Well, this is, of course, because the previous Prime Minister, David Cameron, and his Chancellor, George Osborne, had taken Britain extremely close to China. I mean, they joined the Asia Investment Bank. They were heavily involved in promoting Britain as a good place for Chinese investment. The Chinese speak of this golden age of close relationships with China. And Donald Trump doesn't like that. He's very, very angry about the fact that the British are still so close to Huawei and are still talking about having Huawei involved in the development of their 5G networks. He's making it very clear to the British that at the time when the United States is increasingly seeing China as an adversary, that simply won't fly. We've already had threats from Mike Pompeo that if the British persist with their connections with Huawei, then that will jeopardize the intelligence connection between Britain and the United States, which is the central one in the Five Eyes alliance. And I think that Donald Trump will push this even further. And if you go to conservative newspapers like the Daily Telegraph, I mean mainstream conservative newspapers, you will see that he's gaining traction on this. Again, you see articles like an important one by the former British Foreign Secretary William Hague, in which he says that Donald Trump is right on Huawei and that Britain should indeed do what he's saying. So he's going to meet some resistance, apparently, from Theresa May, which I think he's going to sort of steamroll over. But I think that the US will eventually win this battle. And I think that the Chinese need to accept that before very long, there will not be much place for Huawei, at least in terms of the state contracts in Britain.
All right. What a difference between Trump and Obama, isn't it? I mean, Trump comes to the UK and he's, signaling, the nation state, look within yourselves, do what's in your best interest. And Obama, is in the UK and he's saying, globalism, be integrated with Europe, one Europe, don't look after your best interest, but be, one part of this global, world. It's just night and day, isn't it?
Oh, it's complete night and day. I mean, I remember visits by Bill Clinton and by Obama, obviously, and also by George W. Bush. And those were incredibly ritualistic events. I mean, everything was carefully choreographed and scripted, and there would be speeches which would be incredibly self-laudatory and self-congratulatory. I remember listening to a speech that Obama did when he was here, and he was talking about the world and the relationship between Britain and the US as if we were still in 1950 or even 1970. I mean, it was so completely did not address the underlying realities. Well, with Donald Trump, the underlying realities are front, back, and center. I mean, he just does not shy away from these issues. And of course, for the British, this is something that they're just not used to. I mean, as I said, they're very skilled at putting on a show with their state visits. But with Donald Trump, it's never just a show. I mean, he comes very much with a very transactional agenda. Always for him, it's the interests of the United States as he interprets them. And the British have never seen anything like this before, and they're reeling from it.
Yeah, but the interesting part is, and we'll end it on this, for him, it is always in the interest of the United States. But with the UK, it's like Trump telegraphs to the UK. I mean, he's telegraphing it. Sometimes he's just saying it outright. Yeah. You know, guys, look after your own best interest as well. You know, I may be a tough negotiator on this side of the table, but for you guys, I'm telling you guys, look after your own best interest. I mean, he's telegraphing. You can't get more clear.
Absolutely. This is
We're a
the
bubble,
great...
as you know. Just you guys, be part of the EU. Come on.
Well, this is it, of course, because, I mean, under Obama, I mean, let's be quite clear about this. Britain was as subordinate in its relationship to the US as it is now. It was more subordinate because, of course, they weren't being encouraged. All these ritualistic speeches that Obama used to make here. I mean, he didn't directly threaten the British because he didn't have to. What Trump is doing, as you absolutely rightly saying is, look, he's saying to the British, here I am. I'm representing the United States. You represent Britain for a change. Don't go along with this choreographed, ritualistic, empty show. Talk to me as I talk to you. Which is why, by the way, Jeremy Corbyn was completely wrong not to speak, to do what he did with him. And why I think, by the way, Boris Johnson is also wrong not to meet with him. I mean, I think Donald Trump likes people who stand up to him. And I know people always go on about Donald Trump's supposed penchant for strong leaders. And, that this is why he respects people like Putin and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un and all the rest. Well, why shouldn't he have no respect for the leaders of Europe, for people like, Theresa May and all the rest, when they simply scamper around and don't push back? I think he likes people who push back. I think he respects them. Of course, what he doesn't like is being, abused, and who would? So of course he wants to push for the interests of the United States. He expects the British to push for the interests of Britain. He's not interested in a globalized world or a neoliberal world order or a so-called rules-based order, which, as he knows perfectly well, is not always a fair one and isn't always, as he feels, in the interests of the United States either. So he prefers a world of sovereign states which negotiate hard with each other.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop. Buy a t-shirt, buy a polo shirt like the one Alexander is wearing. Pick up some mugs. Alexander, we have some.
There we go.
Oh yeah, there you have the.
There we go. We have the two mugs as I have.
The two mugs there.
I'm going to be having more soon, I think.
Those are 15-ounce mugs. We have 15-ounce and we have 12-ounce.
And they're great. And they're great mugs. And as I said before, they're incredibly comfortable to handle. They're solid. They're beautifully made. I have now tried them with beer, by the way. By the way,
and it tasted so much better, right?
Good English beer. They did. It tasted great, actually. Right. And it frothed in all sorts of nice ways. This one, because it's got the Romanov, well, not the Romanov, what am I talking about? It's the Moscow symbol. I actually drank Imperial Russian Stout from it, which is a type of beer that we have in Britain. It's a very dark beer, which was famously the favourite beer of Catherine the Great, and it tasted excellently from this, brewed in Britain. So you can have it for tea, which is what I usually use these mugs for, or you can drink coffee, which is what Catherine does, or you can drink, that's my wife, or you can drink beer from these, and they work perfectly. And they are beautiful things. And I would also say that what I'm wearing is a beautiful thing. It is a wonderful polo shirt, 100% cotton, absolutely the best quality. You won't find a better quality polo shirt than this. It's got this beautiful embroidery of the double-headed eagle, which is our symbol because we look both to the east and to the west. Both to Europe and the West and to Asia and the East. And I would add that it's immensely comfortable to wear and use, and you help us every time you buy one.
That's right. And everyone should remember that those mugs are magic mugs. Every sip of beverage that you take, you gain an immense amount of geopolitical knowledge. So if people are always asking why Alexander knows so much, it's because he's been drinking from those mugs for a really long time, actually. So.
Absolutely. So true.
All right, guys. And you can also donate to us on PayPal and Patreon and Subscribestar as well. That also helps us out. So please donate to us. That really, really gives us a hand. And, of course, you can follow us on Instagram, the Duran_com. Follow us there as well. And, Alexander, we also have the Brexit ebook that we have out on the website. You wrote a forward to it. It's actually on the duranshop.com, so you can get the ebook there. Alexander, you want to give a few words about the ebook?
Yes, absolutely, because I said that Donald Trump is coming to Britain, a Britain which is in political crisis, within a political establishment which is in meltdown. And that ebook charts the way it happened. I mean, it gives you an idea of how Alex and I discussed it and analysed it as it was happening in real time. So you can see the evolution of this crisis. And in the foreword that I penned for this book, I also explained how Alex and I, how the Duran, we predicted this crisis. We said, if the political class does not deliver Brexit, you will have an insurrection across England and Wales with a new political force sweeping all before it. We were writing that in 2016, directly after the referendum decision, and that is exactly what has happened. We see it with the Brexit Party, which in the European elections won in every single region of England and Wales, except for London, which is, of course, a unique city, very unlike the rest of England and Wales, and is the only part of England and Wales which voted Remain. So you have a clear insight from this book of what is going on, and it explains the chaotic state of the Britain that Donald Trump is now visiting.
All right, Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.